guys, this is a little kind of housekeeping section of this particular vlog. I am kind of switching up what I'm doing with these book reviews. I'm gonna start doing a series called Pros and Cons because I love puns. I felt like the 5-minute format did not go well for me, and also I don't feel like I actually spoke directly to what I liked about the book that I reviewed. I felt like my thoughts were really scattered and kind of all over the place. And the more that I get into BookTube, the more that I realize that this kind of more colloquial, like conversational vlog style is okay, and you guys seem to like that. So I'm gonna be doing a new series. I'm gonna try and put out at least one book review a month, and I'm probably gonna be starting a Patreon. So I'm about to review this little number, but stay tuned after the video for some more information, I guess. What am I doing? I don't know. Do you guys know what I'm doing? What's up, motherfuckers? It's a good makeup day, so you know what that means. It's time to make a video. It's time for another book review. I've been reading long-winded, meandering book reviews they're in, so I'm gonna do one of those. I'm gonna be reviewing The Atlas Network by Kate Quinn. This is gonna be a spoiler-heavy review because I don't give a shit. I guess let me pitch it. 1947, the chaotic aftermath of World War II. American college girl Charlie St. Clair is pregnant, unmarried, and on the verge of being thrown out of her very proper family. She's also nursing a desperate hope that her beloved cousin Rose, who disappeared in Nazi-occupied France during the war, might still be alive. So when Charlie's parents banish her to Europe to have her little problem taken care of, Charlie breaks free and heads for London, determined to find out what happened to the cousin she loves like a sister. 1915, a year into the Great War, Gardiner burns to join the fight against the Germans and unexpectedly gets her chance when she's recruited to work as a spy. Sent into enemy occupied France. I can do this. I can like read a whole book. Sent into enemy occupied France, she's trained by the mesmerizing Lili, codename Alice, the Queen of Spies, who manages a vast network of secret agents right under the enemy's nose. 30 years later, haunted by the betrayal that ultimately tore apart the Atlas Network, Eve spends her days drunk and secluded in her crumbling London house. That is until I can't read. I really can't read. I can't, this is it. This is my announcement. I can't read. 30 years later, haunted by the betrayal that ultimately tore apart the Atlas Network, Eve spends her days drunk and secluded in her crumbling London house. That is until a young American barges in, uttering a name Eve hasn't heard in decades, and launches them both on a mission to find the truth, no matter where it leads. It is based, at least loosely, on some true events during World War I, which is pretty cool. Lili is based on a real person, the woman who runs the Atlas Network. The Atlas Network was a real thing. This is a story about female empowerment, the commonality of the feminine experience, and freedom and vengeance. If that is your deal, go read this. If you care about being spoiled, you should just go. Just go. Just go. Just go. Because I'm about to start spoiling shit and I don't want you to be here. I got like several pages worth of notes. Yeah, there's gonna be some changes around here. I like actually know what I'm gonna like talk about and shit. I know, it's a change. Okay, so first things first, the writing style of the Atlas Network I think is really solid. I really liked the prose. I thought the prose was really good. I really liked the voices of both of the characters. They're both like really fun. There are a few weird things about the prose occasionally. There are a few times when the language used is like a little bit weird. I think sometimes it is just like, you know, it's in the style of the time period and the area. Obviously I'm not English and I'm also not American in 1940, but there's one example I can think of like right off the bat where I was like, that was a little awkward. The sentence is supposed to be something like, it was as easy as taking candy from a baby. But instead of saying that, it's like,
it was as easy as taking a sticky, hard sugar cube from an infant.
And it feels weird. There are times when like the old language feels forced or just weird. They had Canty back in 1940, I think, and they also had babies, so I don't know why that sentence is so weird. There is some time when the prose is a little bit too far up its own ass, but the writing is really, really good. I really enjoyed the style and the tone. I really liked how the narrative was constructed. I thought it was super dynamic. It really, you move through it really quickly. Even when it's really predictable, you're more like braced for it than you are like, oh yeah, that was really, you don't roll your eyes. You're more just like, don't make that decision. That's a bad decision. When the plot is predictable, it's because somebody has made a bad choice, not because, well, it's not exactly true. That's not exactly true. It didn't make me roll my eyes usually. Usually there's like an in-character reason why somebody is behaving in a predictable way, or like believing a predictable thing, or or predictable things happen, and for some reason, like, even the characters are like, yeah, I probably should have seen that coming. So when it's predictable, it's forgivable. I don't think there was anything in here where I like totally didn't see it coming, but I did really enjoy it. I really enjoyed this book. I'm still like really not in spoiler territory. Just on a technical level, this book it's excellent. It's excellent. You see all these pink tabs. I know you do. You're not blind. We will get to these in a little bit, what these mean, because one of my major complaints about this book is super petty and very, very subjective. But this is my review and I get to say whatever I want. You can't stop me. We'll get there. So, major themes in this book. As I've said, there's a major theme of female connection and connection through femininity. Like the common feminine experience is a big thing in this book. There's a universality to it, which is, represented in like Charlie seeing specters of Rose. Like she sees her in little girls and grown women, and in total strangers and in friends, and just projecting that image of like, this girl, this young woman who she is like one of her dearest friends. She just can see her in everybody. You also get the triple threat pregnancy. Charlie is pregnant, and then, oh, twist, it turns out Rose was also pregnant, and then, oh, twist, it turns out Eve was also pregnant. By the time it came up with Eve, I was like, There are little parts of the book that are like, it's just like, it's up its own ass a little bit. Charlie and Rose like literally name their babies after each other. Rose names her baby Charlotte, and Charlie names her baby Rose. Actually, she names it after both it. It's called the baby it. She names her baby after both Eve and Rose. So there is both a literal and figurative rebirth. I don't know why I said it. Rebirth. As much as Charlie projects Rose onto other people, Eve projects Lili onto Charlie, and they're like constantly comparing other women in their lives to other women that they have known and been close to, which is less about reducing their individuality and more about connecting all of them in this kind of universal female experience. A big part of that universal female experience is the commonality of female pain. The pain of birth and abuse and negligence and, all kinds of things. The commonality of the pain of oppression, kind of men as like alien adversaries in this arrangement. There are very few decent dudes in this book. The grand majority of them are like outright adversaries, like they're adversarial forces. A big theme is that whole like female universality thing is sisterhood. Like it's sisterhood and female admiration, like admiration of other women by women. Weaponized femininity as a way to survive male cruelty and violence, whether that be weaponizing your femininity by like being the fleur de mal, the flowers that flourish in evil, or if it's by like turning off all of your emotions and being cool and just like not caring about what other people think of you, which is something that Charlie, something that Charlie implements like really early in the book and throughout. Eve kind of weaponizes herself in a very traditional way by like, you know, feigning innocence, whereas Charlie kind of weaponizes the worst things that people think about her. She both turns those assumptions about her in on herself, and then also outward as like, I don't care, like you can't hurt me. Everybody has already said the meanest things that will ever be said to me. Like you're not gonna top it. I've heard it all before. Just kind of the turning off of her emotions and the distance from other people that she like by turning herself into, by kind of weaponizing the gendered insults and expectations of her that people have, she renders herself as immune as possible to that criticism. As I said, there are not too many cool dudes in this book. Even the ones who are cool kind of suck. And there's really only one that's cool, so examples of male violence, obviously the pinnacle is Renee. Renee is depicted as very like cool and calculated, intoxicated by Marguerite's apparent fear and inexperience around him, like really into that, grossly into that. He kind of takes this position as like a hunter, and part of that is just Eve really feeling like he can tell something's off about her, but the other part of it is like him taking on that role completely of his own free will. He's like, yeah, that's what I am. I'm like the worst and I love it. And she's like, cool. He is explicitly cruel and disgusting. He's kind of the main antagonist of the whole book, so it makes sense that like his brand of male cruelty is very explicit and very like pungent, powerful, overwhelming to the senses, if you will. But he's definitely not the only example of dudes being just the worst in this book. While Eve experiences very direct male cruelty and negligence, both through Renee and through the Colonel and through the captain that she's allegedly in love with, which we'll get to in a second. While she experiences very direct male cruelty, Charlie more experiences atmospheric male cruelty. She experiences a lot of callousness from the frat guys that she tries to like find catharsis with after her brother's death. She experiences, you know, her father is very cruel to her. Don't come at me like, oh, it's, you know, it's different, like it was different back then, like, you know, the expectations of women, blah 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 blah. Cruelty is not a standard that deviates over time. Does that make sense? Like, even if it is the standard of the day, it's still cruel. If Charlie's brother comes home from war and kills himself, and Charlie doesn't know how to deal with that at all, and I don't blame her, like nobody would. It's awful what happens, and you know, and she deals with it the only way that she can, and part of that is kind of self-inflicted sexual trauma, where it's not like she's outright assaulted by anybody, although she doesn't, you know, explicitly consent to anything. That's much more something that you can argue are like the standards of the day. You know, she goes out with boys, and when they make sexual advances, she doesn't stop them. She doesn't like enjoy the experience at all, but she doesn't stop them. And so she ends up having sex with a lot of people, and when she gets pregnant and goes home, her parents immediately freak out, and in that moment, her father has no empathy for her at all. Like, her father has absolutely no compassion for his own daughter. It's heavily implied that, you know, that her mother is scared of him and like very scared of his opinion, and it is just kind of like this overwhelming background, oppressive cruelty that's directed towards Charlie without ever being like explicitly, you know, like nobody hits her, but he is cruel. He is callous and, you know, has no empathy for her as his child. I don't know why I had to explain why her father's disgust with her was dehumanizing and cruel, but I guess I did. Throughout the story, random dudes presume to know better than Charlie all the time. Like, she goes to get her money out of the bank and, you know, the banker's like, well, does your dad know that you're taking money out of the bank? Like this much money. And she's like, and my dad doesn't need to know because it's my money and I earned it. She is kind of like anonymously wealthy. She's definitely well-to-do, but you know, she's had a job, she's earned her own money, and she's put the money that she earned at a job into a bank account that she then wants to withdraw from. And guys left and right, like random bankers, just dudes, are like, you sure? I don't think you can do that, young lady. She literally has to buy, like, she can't even pawn off her own belongings. Like, she can't, like, sell her own pearls without, like, people, like, dudes being like, are you sure? Or, does your dad know you're out this late? Fuck off. She has to get a wedding ring to be taken seriously. She has to get a real wedding ring to earn her parents' forgiveness, which I get was like supposed to be like a happy thing for her, that she like found the one nice man in the world. She found like the one nice guy, but like it's not, like in the context of the story, that's not that happy. It's not. It is like, both Rose and Eve experience this sexual double standard where like their male counterparts are allowed to do whatever the fuck they want, but they are always expected to remain like sexually pure, like this perfect, untainted version of a human being. They both deal with kind of the secondary trauma of seeing other women suffer, also like experiencing that almost vicariously through other women, because like they all like have like this common experience, so they end up kind of taking on the pain of their closest female friends. Like Charlie's best friend is literally killed by one dude's patent overreaction to a lie. It doesn't get like more on the nose than that. And there's only really, I guess there's one other good dude. There's Finn, and then there's James, who is Charlie's brother, and James kind of also gets to be a good dude, but throughout the story there's like, this is kind of like the main core of the story. For women and girls, the world is rife with suffering, and it all comes at the hands of men, well-meaning or not. Well, not all. It also comes at the hands of women acting on the behalf of men, or women acting in what they think are men's best interest against other women. In the book, this kind of manifests in the frog and the moms, where the moms are kind of act as the agents of the cruel and callous dads. And that also gets into another one of the big themes, which is female autonomy, which is why everybody's pregnant. Like, if you read this story and like me were like, why is everybody fucking pregnant? Because it is the most direct way to talk about female autonomy, both social and physical. What really connects Charlie and Eve is that they're both very self-directed. They both want to direct their own destinies. They both want to direct their own destinies badly enough to do whatever they have to do. The female characters in this book really struggle to connect with anybody who's not also a woman. It's easy to understand why when you look at the male-dominated world that is so cruel to them in this book. It's easy to understand why they're like that, like why it's easier for them to connect to each other, like two very wildly different people, because they have naturally, just naturally, by the benefit of being women, they have this common experience just by the nature of having been women alive in the world, which is real as hell. Charlie literally only starts to connect to her own baby once she decides it's a girl. It is so much easier for them to connect to each other than to men in a world where like the representatives of good dudes is like 2 out of like a bazillion dudes. And that kind of brings me to my point. It brings me to the pink tabs. It is so weird that in this book that is all about female commonality and sisterhood and love between women and about how difficult it is in this world for women, how that makes it incredibly difficult to connect with men and how men are largely adversarial forces in the lives of women. It makes it so weird that neither of these characters are gay. I said it. There it is. Like, it's weird. It's weird. And I do say that as a queer woman. I do. But these pink tabs, they're me screaming into the void. I flagged after a certain point. I was just like, I just can't take this anymore. I'm literally gonna flag every single time I'm reading a line and in my head I'm like, that's gay. It's like half the book. For Charlie, it almost kind of works. For her, falling in love with a guy is as much about her kind of coming to terms with the context of her trauma and pregnancy as anything else. And Finn, like, to his credit, Finn is really cool. Their romance is not insta love. It's weird in the way that straight romances are typically weird, in that, you know, they just kind of like assume that they're gonna have sex and like go from there. What's that like? I really don't understand. Their bond is kind of secondary to the fact that they're gonna bang, but not as much as it usually is. Usually in books like this, they kind of make up their mind to have sex and then justify that decision later. It takes them a while to get into a relationship, and when they do, it feels earned. Like, Finn's a good dude. Finn's a good dude. Their whole sex scene was weird. It was weird. But Charlie, I could believe, was straight-ish. She's not straight, but I could believe that she would end up with a dude. That worked with her narrative arc pretty well. Why the fuck is Eve straight? Eve is not straight. Like, I don't know why I asked that question. Eve's not straight. Eve's not straight. It is weird that in a book that's all about women loving other women, that both of them are straight. It is really weird that Eve is straight. It's really weird. I don't know how else to say it. It's weird. It's really weird. Eve's love interest is essentially invisible for most of the book. Like, Cameron's like not even really in this book. Like, he's not in here. He's gone. He's a ghost. He's invisible. He's not in here. Like, he's not in here. He's functionally not really in this story at all. He's only there really to be a love interest to Eve, and that's very weird. Eve meets Lili. Like, so when Cameron is like, oh, Lily's like in charge of the Alice Network, and she's like, you know, she's like amazing and the boss, she's just bomb as hell. Eve's like, I'm a fighter. I'm a be bigger and better and smarter and prettier than her. Like, I'm an Aries, I get it. And then she meets her, she like has like a shit, she's hot moment. Like, she has it. It's like in the book. And that's kind of every single time she's around Lili. She's just like,
she's amazing and she's beautiful and I love her so much. Like, she's really, she's just the best, and I'm so fucking gay.
that is the vibe. That's the vibe. It's so powerful. And I was like, girl, I feel you. I feel you. She has a deep, passionate love for Lili. Like, she loves her so much. And I was here for it. Like, you know, like I was here for it. I completely resonated with it. And then like halfway through this book, Lili like mentions Cameron and is like, oh, you're in love with him, right? Right, Eve? Your good old buddy Cameron, who you talk about all the time? who you haven't mentioned in like several chapters, that guy, you're very in love with him, right? And Eve's like, yes. And I, the reader, am supposed to fucking believe that shit. Cameron is no one. He's basically in here for like a few choice scenes with Eve. And he feels like a plot device, and he is a plot device. Charlie falling for Finn makes sense. Finn is a sweetheart. I have no idea who Cameron is. He's like supposed to be like all self-sacrificing and sweet, but like he has no personality at all. He's not really in the book. He's not, I can only do this joke so many times. He's not really in it, except for a few choice scenes. He's really just there to pivot Eve at key moments. And you can have characters like that, but they shouldn't be a romantic interest, especially when there's another romantic interest filling the fucking pages of your book. There's a compelling romantic plot that you're not honoring by like trying to get me to care about this fucking dweeb. And for that matter, Cameron's based on a real person, and it makes his end feel really cheap and manipulative. Why couldn't Eve have just been friends with Cameron? Like, that's my thing, is like, I feel like a friendship with Cameron would make so much sense. And like, you wouldn't even really need to change anything about their plot. Like, they could even have sex and it wouldn't be that weird. And especially because Eve's very, you know, she's learned, she's a good spy and she wants to continue doing it. So if she had sex to manipulate him and they're like friends and she like abuses the fact that he's a dude and he really struggles to have platonic relationships with women, if she were to abuse that in some way, I think that would be more interesting and compelling than trying to sell me on a love story that doesn't exist between them. Especially when one exists between her and Lili. I don't understand! It's dumb. Eve's gay. Eve's really gay. And like, I get it. Like, women can be friends. Of course women can be friends. Women can have deep-seated, intimate relationships with other women. And those are very, very important. And of course, I'm not diminishing that at all. Everybody's allowed to have friends. Everybody's allowed to have friends. You can have friends. I'm not saying that Eve can't have female friends. Of course she can. I'm just saying she's gay. Eve is just very clearly in love with Lili. She's in love with her. She would die for her. The crux of Eve's story is Renee trying to destroy her by making her think she's betrayed the person that she truly loves. That's really compelling shit. Like, it's really good. It works really well for her arc that her love for herself and her profession is inextricably linked to Lili. Like, look, just let me, I'm gonna pick a random pink tab, and if it's not gay and I'm wrong, we can go to bed. We can just go to, we can go to sleep. We can go to bed. Oh yeah. So this is when Eve is talking about how she is thinking of kind of honeypotting Renee, where, you know, she's started having sex with him in order to keep her cover, which, yikes, she and Lili are talking about the fact that even though Eve hates him, she gets physical pleasure from being with him sexually. She's talking about how a physical response unrelated to the head or the heart is what marks a whore. So like, if you can have physical enjoyment without like liking a person or being engaged with them. And Lili is brushing her hair while she says this, because Eve's like, I feel like a whore. I feel, you know, disgusting and tainted and whatever. And Lili stops brushing her hair, rests her chin atop Eve's head, and is like, did your mom tell you that? Did your mom tell you that, like, if you enjoy sex, you're a whore? And Eve's like, yeah, kind of. Lili is basically like, you know, look, if we were ordinary women, we'd be at home darning our men's socks, but we're not, because we're gay and we're spies. And she basically gives her license to, like, have sex and have fun, comforts Eve, and allows her to enjoy having sex with a man that she hates. That's gay. It's really gay, and the book would have been vastly improved by it being explicitly gay. So, things that I loved about this book. Like I said, the prose is amazing. It's really evocative and compelling and dynamic. It made me feel things in my chem. It also portrayed France in a way that made it like really romantic and gorgeous. I've like read and watched a ton of things that are like set in France, and I just don't care when I watch and read those things. But like I read this book and I was like, man, France is cool. I want to go to France. The characters are fantastic. I really enjoyed them a lot. I connected with them a lot. You really feel like you get enough time with both of them because the narrative is split. Like you really get time to learn a lot about them and feel out like who they are as people, and who they are as people is actually like really different. You know, Charlie and Eve are very, very different people and grow up in very different times and have very different ideas about, you know, certain things. They don't have very different ideas about like what they want, even though their motivations are very different and their goals are very different, if that makes sense. You get to spend a lot of time with both of them. You get to kind of be in both of their heads, and like you get really fond of them. Like they're both, it is fun to be with both of them, which is usually something that split narrative books really suffer from, is that one protagonist is very compelling and the other one is kind of like a sidekick, which you'd think would really happen here, but Charlie is really the driving force of the present narrative, the one that's set in the future, and is very, very active in seeking, you know, her goal. And that's part of what makes the plot so dynamic, is that both she and Eve are people who take action, for better or for worse. The perspective switch works really, really well, and it gives the story really great momentum. Like you never feel bored with what's going on. There's always something happening in whoever's perspective you're in. It's always a change up that works, where you're not like, no, don't switch perspectives, I want to stay in this perspective. But it does mean that when you come back to the other person's perspective, you don't feel that either. There's no like whiplash between the two of them, except for one very specific part of the narrative where they switch back and forth really rapidly, and I understand why they do it. It's a very suspenseful scene where they're both present and like one is like slightly ahead of the other in this house, and so like you're switching back and forth between them, and you don't know how far the other person is ahead of the other person or like what's about to happen. It's all very suspenseful and effective, but it is obnoxious. Like, I understand why it's done, and it is done to decent effect, but it is obnoxious. And I didn't like it. Those are the pros. The cons. So I did mention that it is occasionally predictable. Sometimes this is great. Like when Eve gets caught by Renee, you fucking know it's gonna happen. You fucking know. Like she goes back, and the whole time you're like, no, don't go back. Like Lili just got caught. Like, are you crazy? Do not go back there. And then she goes back and she immediately gets caught, and you're like, ugh. It was predictable, but at the same time, I was just like, I wasn't mad at the narrative, I was just mad at her. I was like, why do you make bad decisions, Eve? I like physically groaned. I was like, no. Sometimes it's kind of cool that it's as predictable as it is. Other times, it's the worst. When it turns out that Eve was also pregnant, like I got what that was thematically. I still hated it. Rose being pregnant too was like, I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. So I was like, oh, okay, you're both pregnant. Whoa. That seemed like a cheap twist, but it worked. The fact that Eve figures out that Charlie's pregnant, like right around the time in the story that she's like, oh, and also I was pregnant. But why though? I got that it was like symbolic or whatever, but I hated it. It was stupid. We're already in spoiler territory. When it turns out Rose is dead, and you're like, yeah, I know. Like, as soon as Charlie was like, we're gonna find her and she's gonna be fine, I was like, that bitch dead. That bitch is so dead. It like, honestly, it really took me out of it, because I was just like, man, are they really gonna be that obvious about it? Is it gonna be like they're gonna be that obvious about it where like she's gonna be like, she's alive and everything's fine. Like, I was just like, are you really telegraphing it from like that far away? Because like up until then it's been kind of like a mystery, like maybe Rose is alive, but like as soon as they make, you know, Charlie like so certain that she is alive, you know she's dead. And it just like, I don't know, it just really took me out of it, and I was like, I thought it was lame. Not that the, you know, the death scene and like that whole thing isn't evocative. It is, it's really evocative, and it's well written, and it's just that I saw it coming a mile away. That's all. It was very, very obvious that that was what was going to happen. Like, I wasn't surprised, and I would have liked to be surprised. I like surprises. Surprises are great. It also, like, it just really, it takes the punch out of the mystery, and I kind of liked, like, the mystery. Oh, yeah, okay, so sometimes, several times, characters are mentioned as like always doing, you know, always having something, always doing, like Lili, for example, is described late in the book as always having a rosary, when she has never been mentioned as having a rosary before. And I get that like part of this is like, you know, it's fragmentation that comes as a result of like moving in and out of multiple perspectives, but it's super weird. Like the fact that they never plant it at all. This is less of a problem, but they mention like Charlie always takes care of the tab, like she always calculates the check. Why don't you ever show her doing that? It's a lot of telling and not a lot of showing. There's only so much showing you can do, obviously. You have a very limited spatial budget, so to speak. Like you just only have so much time to tell everybody what's happening. But it's weird that like you mention like this thing that, let's say, Lili always has, and you've never mentioned it before, ever. It's generally acceptable. I don't want to say like it's super egregious. It's always for like very, very small stuff. But it did bug me. Oh my god. Okay. We're finally to the one yellow tab. They're all pink, and then I have just this one tiny little yellow booger, this one right here. Am I gonna be this nitpicky? I am. So Charlie's supposed to be good at math. If you've read this book, you already know what I'm about to talk about. I am sure you do. When you're writing a character who like has a skill that's very, very different from you, or a hobby that's wildly different from a hobby you have two pretty distinct options. One is to mention it and like really actually do all this research and familiarize yourself with a thing as much as you possibly can, and just hope that real experts about that thing don't come for you on the internet, which is easier with some things than with others. Example from this book, Finn really likes cars and has a huge passion for cars, and it's clear that Kate went through and like actually learned a whole bunch about cars of this era. So that's option number one, is that you actually do a deep dive and you learn everything there is to know about this thing. And the other option is that you go in with your same knowledge and you just kind of don't get into the parts of it that you don't understand. You don't try to talk about stuff that you don't know. This happens a lot with characters like that are supposed to be like genius scientists, because they are, but you're not. So what you do is you just kind of skate around the parts of that you don't understand. And I'm not doing a very good job of describing how you do that, because this isn't a how-to, this isn't a tutorial, but those are your two options. You can either become a master of the thing, which is difficult if you're, say, talking about a mathematician or a scientist, because real people who know a lot about that thing exist, and they will come for you. You will like force them out of the book for a second when you really fuck it up. Or you can just kind of avoid talking about it directly and just sort of mention it, allude to it, and that usually works. She does a really, really good job of this for most of the book, but not always. And it's kind of egregious when Charlie does people equations, girl plus boy multiplied by a bad situation divided by two families, or something like something stupid that isn't really a math problem. She does that a lot, and it's a little obnoxious, but like you kind of get it. You're like, okay, whatever. But there is one point in the book where Finn has just finished talking about cars, and that's what he's passionate about. So he invites Charlie to talk about something that she's passionate about. And she starts talking about math. And instead of talking about anything about math that is remotely mathematically impressive at all, she starts talking about the Pythagorean theorem. I mean, she does say that she picked something easy. It's embarrassing. Like, I put this little yellow tab here because it was embarrassing to read. It was embarrassing. I was embarrassed. I got secondhand embarrassment from reading this. It's super hokey. Just, math is so interesting. I don't know anything about it, but it's really interesting. And like, there were really cool things going on with math at this point in time. Like, you know what? Okay. I'm gonna get on my phone and I'm gonna look up cool math shit World War II. So I just found an article by the NSA called How Mathematicians Helped Win World War II. This is literally an article about how Alan Turing, basically the Germans were using mathematical sequence, basically a machine called the Enigma, to encode their messages. And with help from Alan Turing, they used math to decode German coded messages and win World War II. So I think maybe there was some cool shit going on with math around this time that you could have looked up, Kate. I just fucking, you know what? I just Googled it. I don't know. What do I know? Also, let me say this. It was very weird to dive into this book right after The Hate You Give and deal with a cast that was all white people again. That's not necessarily a critique of the book. I'm just saying. I literally just got on Wikipedia and it has a whole section about how France is, at the moment, 85% white. The people who live there who are not indigenous French people, which is wild that white people are indigenous anywhere. Other European groups of non-native origin are Spaniards, Portuguese, Romanians, Poles, and Greeks. Few of those have brown skin. An influx of North African Jews immigrated to France in the 1950s after the Algerian War. Subsequent waves of immigration followed the Six-Day War when some Moroccan and Tunisian Jews settled in France. I'm not saying that one of these people in the cast needed to be a person of color. I'm just saying that it's weird that there's no people of color anywhere in this entire book, ever. And that the all-white cast is occasionally described as tan or brown. Are they though? Are they though? Like I say, this is not a critique. This is an observation. I'm just saying it was a weird segue. But yeah, those are my thoughts about the book. I thought the book was excellent. I loved it. 4 out of 5 stars. Needs more gay. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am really enjoying my first forays into BookTube. I am starting a Patreon. I'm gonna link it right here. And I'm gonna be putting out one BookTube thing a month at least. I'm gonna try to do more, but if I can't, I'll do at least one a month, I promise. They are gonna be a little bit more long form because I know y'all like seeing people ramble about books, and I'm really good at rambling. I'm also gonna be starting to try my hand at video essays, so if you guys are into that, you can check those out. I'll be posting those here as well. I am really looking forward to seeing you guys some more, getting to know you, and maybe making some friends. Maybe not friends. Maybe people who are willing to stare at me for a while. Is that you?